creators work with brands or advertisers, what we've typically seen over the last 4 or 5 years is the rights to buy the content. It's some preliminary searches around how that content was being used by the advertisers that had licensed it. And 6 out of 10 of the advertisers had misused that content against the rights they had permission to do so. I think it was Unilever, and they built a campaign that had 300 pieces of content, 3 months worth of rights across all of those. And since the performance report, only 10 of the assets out of 300 they'd used. And I thought, how are we at this point where brands are overpaying for rights? I mean, this market has been around since 2016, really, maybe slightly earlier. And how have we not got this right? And the second part of this was then, well, I went away and I looked at the 10 assets that had been used, what we paid the creator and how many people had seen it. 80, 90 million impressions, but we paid the creator about £1,000. And you think, where's the market here? How are brands overpaying and talent being underpaid? And so we sit here in this day and age where we say that there's no mechanic or framework for both parties to understand how to contract that fairly or pay for it fairly.
Well, I also think, let's be honest. I mean, you were there, as you say, right from sort of the early days. This was an industry that was 2016, 1.6 billion from memory, you know, and it is almost, we've often talked about it being a bit of a Wild West industry. It's very entrepreneurial as well. Entrepreneurial, but it's only in these last few years that we're starting to see it really drive not just brand awareness, but further down the funnel. So therefore, we're getting way more money coming into the sector, and of course, more scrutiny. Of course, needed. Of course, absolutely right. Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, film licensing. I mean, I'm an author. We have to go through all sorts of details in relation to licensing, and you think, well, why and rights rather. I mean, here's my book, for example. I cannot give somebody, like somebody said to me, oh, can I have a PDF? We'll put it into Lovable and we'll create it. I said, no, I actually don't own the rights to my own book.
That's crazy, isn't it?
Isn't it? Yeah, but
you've seen it with music. In a lot of ways, there are royalty infrastructures and ownership infrastructures, and they've built in licensing frameworks, and I won't talk about like how musicians get paid, but in theory you have collection societies, you upload content, it gets distributed via your network, and you get paid per play. And so there is a mechanic that pays you fairly on exposure. Now I don't know how fair that is for the music industry, but we've never had that maturity in this space. And I think, to your point around creators, they're not just in one line item, they're in most line items now. Brands are engaging them within above the line, digital, social. They're starting to use that as a vehicle for distribution, which is amazing for the industry. But then it's all about the rights.
Yeah, no, absolutely fascinating. So tell me a bit more about the platform then. Why did you? Obviously, you found a need, you found an issue. Tell us about how it's evolved.
Well, it came about because typically seeing that the partners or platforms that were winning were those that were negotiating better on rights. For instance, Meta wanted rights in perpetuity because of indemnity and liability. If I pass content to my advertiser and they misuse it, I'm Meta liable. Whereas TikTok wanted it for 3 months, and they wanted it with rights for other platforms because they had their watermark and they could drive adoption of that by being present. And so I started to see the framework happening. We started to build the platform from a philosophy of, well, how do we build that mechanic into it? And where's the issue start? The issue starts with no one knows how to price rights. We have a calculation based on how to price content. It's, and that's very subjective because creators put different levels of energy and output into creating their content. Be it, you have graphic designers who are creators, you have travel creators. So you can never touch what their production cost is because it's very subjective. But then when we started to look at usage rights, it was, well, this is a performance element, really. Brands want to use it to drive performance, if it's CPM, cost per click, whatever else it might be. And so how do we start to move that slightly closer so that they can negotiate better? And what we started to see was actually one of the biggest issues was that no agencies knew how to price rights. They had a method. All agencies had a method. We went and spoke to about 150 different talent agencies, and we got about 149 different answers on how they price usage rights.
Wow.
And I thought, again, it was like, what we're trying to do is build the fair market. And so everyone's got to be let into being paid fairly and everything else. But that's quite difficult for the advertiser Because if the advertiser's having to negotiate with different agencies or different talent and buy rights in different ways, how are they going to optimize their marketing strategy? And so we started to see a bit of that. And then I kind of had this usage rights thing happening in the background that we needed to do something here. And then actually I was in LA in Culver City in TikTok's offices, and they brought me in and showed me TikTok Symphony, which is their AI solution. And you can take a URL from any web page, put it into their AI tool. This was about 3.5 years ago now. And it would scrape that web page, that landing page, generate a creative brief off the information that it got, price point, product, all this, turn that creative brief into a video, and then put an avatar on that video. 2 minutes. Very interesting. What do you think? This is quite scary. I was at my old agency. I thought this is also quite a threat because, what are we going to do here? And then they asked me, well, how do we put someone's IP in it? How do we put Gordon's likeness, his face? How do we put Nike's logos? How do we ensure there's copyright clearance, approval, consent, remuneration, done at scale? Advertisers can access this. How do we create influencer marketing AI content was really the question. So you had these two concurrent threads, you had usage rights and you had like licensing likeness. And so we were trying to license someone's face, but we couldn't even license their content. And I thought this is kind of the wrong way around. And so TrueRights was really born out of the fact that we wanted to make sure that we built trust in the space, that talent got paid fairly, had more visibility over how their content and rights were being used, and therefore we could help them or educate them or give them the opportunity to work with AI in the future. And that's really down to their discretion. I don't think we're for or against in any particular way, but it's about giving the tooling and the systems that allow creatives to consolidate their rights in one place. And so that's what the platform's been built off, is how do we build this kind of agnostic, in the middle platform that allows rights holders, and we're talking here about talent and creators, but also we're doing it with other studios and IP rights holders, brands that have great brand and characters and everything else that comes out of kind of their IP catalog. And how do we give them a platform that allows them to amalgamate everything into one so that they can better manage and control their rights and IP?
Interesting. And obviously we're talking about usage rights. What about brand licensing? Does that come into what you are looking at or exploring? Do we need to sort of educate creators on brand licensing?
I think so, yeah. And it's one of the same. And I think this was a real North Star for us when we set out building TrueRights, was how do we build the licensing foundational framework? If you want to license anything, be it product, be it image, be it content, it's one of the same. You need the technical underpinning, the ability to watermark, track, price fairly, but actually it doesn't matter what we're licensing because it's all digitized in some regard.
Yeah.
And so actually we are seeing a lot of brands interested in this space. I think a lot of brands are understanding how they can engage. And so you have creator brands and brand brands, I guess, but they're one of the same, right? You're seeing how they can engage with third parties, and so how they can license, how they can monitor what's being created, make sure it's within guidelines and guardrails and everything else they've kind of built their brand around, but also understand the performance of it. We can't really give too much of a true indication around performance until we have a licensing framework that tells us the attribution. And attribution is what generates commercial models. Value, exactly that.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really interesting. I was at Adweek this week. I don't know if you went.
No.
And I went to, and it's kind of one of the same. I went to a workshop around AI content creation engine. And I've always been looking at, like I said, from a talent lens, but then they were talking about brands making digital twins for their product. And I always thought twin was like, it was very
personal,
humane, yeah. It was, but you have shampoo bottles, you need to create a digital twin. You don't want to use IP and let it go out into the digital space and lose control over it. And so actually we're seeing a lot of brands, both creator and also brand, starting to understand the importance of their IP. And I think brand identity companies, those that work on branding are going to do a massive amount of work in the next few years, especially around how they optimize for AI.
Interesting. So how do you see this, when we talk about AI, it's going to affect the creator economy for sure. And there are people excited about it, but there are also people concerned about its misuse. The likes of deep fake. And the point I'm making is any license is only as good as the enforcement with it.
Absolutely.
And my worry is there enough enforcement around that? And if so, who's going to do it?
The answer is no, not yet. The long answer is hopefully we do. I mean, the difficulty about enforcement is that you need to understand what you're enforcing. And so we've never had any systems to gather rights and IP. And you're seeing also talent like Luke Littler start to trademark themselves.
Yes.
And
that's
so
a very good example.
It becomes a consolidation piece, because where do you store this and how do you govern it? And enforcement is a technical requirement because, well, I've spoken to a few brands recently who think enforcement is a legal requirement. And it is, but at scale, it needs to be technical and legal, because otherwise you have lawyers looking for things and cease and desists. But my concern with that is that in this new day and age, and again, I think I'd love to get your thoughts on this, the market's growing up in a certain way that if there's misuse, it's cease and desist and take down. But that isn't fair, because you've already used my image. And so actually what TrueRights are trying to do is get revenue recovery and get attribution for the fact that you've misused that and commercialise it for the rights holder.
Well, so let me give an example, right? So on my website, I don't know how it happened, but we put a photograph on there that was copyrighted.
Yep. Happens all the time, by the way.
Right.
Yeah.
I know.
It makes you feel better.
I know. And I got a letter as a lawyer company that specialises in this. And not only did they ask me to remove it or to pay the fee, and obviously the first thing I was going to say, yeah, well, I'll take it down, no problem. But they also were very keen to, understand that I'd already used this image. And even though I hadn't made loads of money, it was in a commercial context. So I ended up having to pay for something. And you can see that, because those types of companies are driven at scale to do this, I mean, it can be, an awkward situation for some people, I would imagine, that has never had to deal with that. So I go back to my point about the importance of education, and licensing means that you must obey these things. Otherwise, I mean, if this is on a bigger scale and with bigger creators, then you're going to get some potentially big lawyers involved, potentially, aren't you?
I think the interesting thing about that is it's reactive enforcement.
Yes.
And so, yes, there's education. You need to understand where to license it from, or if this content is being taken, how do I make sure I'm contributing to the rights holder? But actually, because it's always been quite archaic and done with, big contract papers and everything else, and there's been no technical underpinning, you as the user of that content haven't had any reassurance about how to license it. And so, one of the jobs and North Stars that we have is that, an understanding of attribution wherever content goes. So if you use it on your website, we look at provenance of that content, and that you've used it off someone else.
Yes.
And as opposed to getting you taken down, you could just pay a license to use it.
Yes.
The difficulty you've probably had, or others have had, is that you probably used it for a period of time, and then you're getting this big fee at the end.
Yes.
And so you're going, well, I didn't put this in my cash flow or my P&L or whatever else it might be. But actually, you'd see the value in it if it was incremental and you knew you were licensing it.
Well, if you think about Getty Images, for example, a very well-known brand in the space, they will be, and Shutterstock, you pay subscription models to these organisations, many people do, and that gives them access because they will then apportion that to the various people that have provided that content.
Exactly, yeah.
So you can totally understand it.
Yeah.
Amazing, good. So where do you see all this going? What's the sort of headwinds?
Well, I think taking two lanes of it, I think with usage rights, I see better mechanics in the space, and I think, creators will be around forever, I'm sure, in some regard, and they will become even more important towards brands because they're becoming their own brands, as you said. And so I see maturity in the kind of usage licensing space. I see fair payment. Maybe it's wishful thinking, but things we're advocating for. And I feel there will be better visibility. When it comes to AI, I think, to your point, it is a sensitive topic. And it's a sensitive topic because we've almost started on the back foot. The media is really negative about it. Government can't quite decide on what to do. And actually, you're interfering with copyright law, which is different in multiple different markets.
Of course it is.
And so where I see it going, and where it should go, hopefully, is standardisation. It should be about giving the tooling to the rights holder to allow them to do work with AI or not to work with AI, but it's down to them as to what they need. But in order to do so, we had a digital world, social world, and now we have a digital, social AI world. And that's almost, I was thinking about this yesterday, it's an isolated machine AI, because it's not like social platforms that you can type something on and see if it comes up.
Exactly.
It's very isolated and underneath the surface.
Yeah.
And so what needs to happen, and what we're trying to campaign for in a number of different ways with a handful of AI partners, is better attribution and visibility, because you need to know if your content's being used for training. You need to have the access to understand if you're being deepfaked, and there's a big requirement on the platforms and the policies there to better protect creators, because creators have built their platforms for them. I think there's a bit of a naivety there.
I mean, even on social media posts, the amount of people that put these listicles and infographics that are really cool, and you can see that people have copy pasted it and literally done it for their own purposes and reports without any attribution to the
YouTube and Content ID have done a great job there for attribution to the creator if content's being used, but we haven't seen that level of maturity which we thought would happen in the market. And so I think we've got to understand who the cause for change is here when it comes to budgets, and it's brands. And brands are leaning into AI content. I think there was something like 70 million ads created alone in Q4 just off Google Gemini. And so you look at all the other platforms out there that are focused towards ads, Arcades, OpenAI to some extent, 11 Labs, great tools and great systems that do have models in place to remunerate creators. But actually, the difficulty you have as a creator is, one, I need to probably find a way of adopting this if I want to, because budget's going to slightly shift, not fully, but slightly shift, because advertisers want better ROI, lower cost for creation. And when you're not producing the content yourself as a creator, there's no production fee for you. And so all of the importance is on rights. What am I licensing? Is it my likeness? Where's that content going? How am I being compensated for it? But the one thing I don't think creators do want, or agencies alike, is at the moment what we have in terms of the system is that all these AI tools require you to sign up to them and opt in, opt out, whatever else it might be. Now, actually, if I'm a creator that wants to work with AI, I have to go and sign into 11 Labs, and then HeyGen, and then OpenAI, and Runway, and Synthesia, and the list goes on.
Quite.
How do I manage that? Like, I've got to upload my IP, my data, I've got to go in every day, review deals, or I've got to give a license in perpetuity or irrevocable license for a period of time. And then you put a talent agency on that has 100 creators under each manager or whatever else it might be. Have they got to log in each day to these tools and understand where their content's being used, 10 different policies, code of conduct, payment terms? And so I think hopefully where the market is going that we're taking is this interoperable system that gives full visibility on IP and rights, that allows tools to plug into us so that talent have an easier way of managing it. But 6 out of 10 of the Super Bowl adverts were made with AI or had AI attributed within it.
Goodness me.
So the market is going that way.
Yeah.
It won't fully adopt, and I hope it doesn't, by the way.
No.
But it should be exciting that there's a new revenue model for someone that has IP and value in that. And it's down to them to choose if they want to do it. But this is a new revenue opportunity. And I think, like I said, the whole perception of AI, rightly so, has been very negative today. And if we can find more harmony in working with these tools...
But isn't that also because of ignorance? It's not necessarily, and it's scaremongering by media.
Oh, it's massively scaremongering.
Yeah, there are lots of exciting things that are happening in AI, which probably don't get the same level of attention that they should. But I love what you're doing, Ben. It sounds really, really exciting. So how can people find out more about connecting with you?
LinkedIn, always a great place. You might get frustrated with how many posts I do, but if you can see past that, then LinkedIn's a great way to reach out to me. TrueRights.com, and so we have a lot of our tooling systems on there, from usage rights calculators to content monitoring to AI deepfakes, all within that platform as well. Or we're running events, going to events, any of the above, really.
Great, super. Thank you so much for joining me.
No, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So thanks again for tuning in to the Influence Global podcast. And from me, Gordon Glenister, it's bye for now.